Hello everyone, hope you all are doing well. This is Gautam from Shailaja IAS, and in this video we'll discuss on the issue of the Kurian Joseph Committee Report, the recommendations which has been released recently in February 2026. Right. So what was this Kurian Joseph Committee? Who constituted it? What was the objective of this committee? First thing, it was constituted by Tamil Nadu government. Objective was what? To try and understand the present center and state relationship and suggest measures in order to rebalance the center and state relationship. Because southern states were arguing, especially Tamil Nadu was arguing, that states are gradually losing its autonomy over a period of years. And they said that it is necessary that we restore this federal balance, which has now tilted heavily in favor of center. The argument is also that in the beginning of our independence era, there was centralization tendency, and it was accepted primarily because a new nation was born. There was memory of partition. Princely states were newly integrated, so there were disintegration forces. They were not really sure if states will fully accept the authority of the union. So it was natural and it was acceptable that the center has more powers against the state. But now, after 7 decades of vibrant functioning of a federal democratic country like India, states are now arguing that you don't need to now continue to have the centralizing powers or continue to have the centralizing tendencies. They say that you need to now decentralize certain powers and have the trust on the states in order to drive the growth and developmental story of India. Okay, so now whatever they are saying, that centralizing tendency in the beginning of independence era was justified, but now now we have proved that there are no disintegrating factors that are present in India. So they are saying that we need to restore that federal balance. So it was briefly in that context this committee was constituted by Tamil Nadu government in April 2025, and the first phase of report was released in February 2026. It was tabled in Tamil Nadu Legislative Assembly and accepted by the Union government. Right. We'll try and understand in this video what are the present centralizing tendencies that are highlighted in the report itself. We'll try and understand what are the implications of these centralizing tendencies. Right. This will become important to you from a GS2 polity perspective. Right. And finally, we'll look into what are the key recommendations of Kurian Joseph Committee Report. Right. So before that, I just want to give you a context of what all committees were constituted in order to study the union and state relationship. This is not the first committee which has been constituted. In 1969, under the Chief Ministership of Karunanidhi, who is the present day Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu is Stalin, his father. He had constituted a committee which was headed by Rajamannar, and it submitted its report in 1971. That also more or less pointed out what was the imbalance that was present in central and state relationships and gave certain recommendations. Union government took note of this particular committee because it became a central point of discussion at a national level. Even though it was appointed by Tamil Nadu government, the report became a debate at a national level. So Union government constituted its own committee or commission in 1983, which submitted its report in 1988 called as Sarkaria Commission. And in Manmohan Singh era also, another committee was constituted called as Punchi Commission. It was constituted in 2007 and submitted its report in 2010. I think the recommendation of all these committees are clearly given in your Lakshmikant textbook. You can go through that in order to understand what were the key highlights of the recommendations of these commissions, right? You might ask, who is Kurian Joseph? Kurian Joseph is a retired judge of Supreme Court. And the Kurian Joseph Committee is not a single member committee. It is also having two other members. One is an IAS officer and another is an economist. Right. Now we'll try and understand what are the centralizing tendencies that are present in the current context. Right. First and foremost thing, which the government has which the report has noted, which is also aligning with the government's stance, is that the office of governor is being misused. Okay, so office of governor is being misused where primarily with regard to providing assent to the bills that has been passed by the state legislative assembly. And second, you can say function where it has been misused is your governor is a chancellor of state universities, right? Even though it is a nominal role, but there are certain discretionary powers associated with the governor acting as a chancellor of state universities that is coming in conflict with your state government. Okay, so in fact, the case was filed by the by Tamil Nadu government in the Supreme Court, alleging that governor is indefinitely sitting on the bills that has been passed by the Tamil Nadu State Legislative Assembly, and that is against the democratic spirit itself. And eventually, Kerala also joined Tamil Nadu in order to push forward the same case. And the Supreme Court gave its order by giving certain timelines for the governor, and that is now being objected because union government is saying that you cannot fix deadline or timeline for a constitutional office like governor. Okay, Supreme Court cannot prescribe such kind of timelines. If at all any sort of timelines needs to be decided, it needs to come through a parliamentary mandate, right? So that is a separate issue which is going on, but the committee has noted it and clearly stated that the office of governor is being misused, and that is the issue that has been raising since the era of since your 1950s itself. So office of governor was constituted under your colonial time period with the intention of trying to control the state affairs, and some of that tendency to interfere in state affairs, to view it with suspicion, has continued, and to act as an agent of the central government has continued till the present day. Okay, so that is one of the trends that has been noted by the committee. Second thing, it reinforces the argument that there is centralizing tendency, especially with regard to concurrent list. Concurrent list currently contains your education, health and forest. Center is occupying predominant role over there, which is leaving states with a minimal space to operate. Because in concurrent list, both state and central can make laws and policies, but the central laws is going to have precedence or preference or priority over the state laws. So the argument is that if center is time and again pushing laws, policies on this concurrent list, which is going to override the state legislations on the same subject, states are losing their own space, so they're not having the power in order to function more effectively. Right? They also say about GST Council imbalance, because see, any resolution that needs to be passed in GST Council needs to have 75% of the votes, but center is having 33% of the votes. So effectively, center is having a veto power. Okay, so that is why they say it is imbalance to the states, right? So they argue that center's weightage of voting needs to be reduced further, right? A couple other centralizing tendencies is the conditionalities which are being put with regard to centrally sponsored schemes. Centrally sponsored schemes means what? Where state and central government are going to work collaboratively in order to implement that scheme. Midday meals is a centrally sponsored scheme. A part of it is contributed by center, part of it is contributed by the states. So they argue that they are not providing these funds unconditionally. They are putting certain conditions. You need to undertake certain reforms. For example, Tamil Nadu has been against the central government with regard to Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan funds. Central government is saying that if you implement NEP 2020, that is New Education Policy of 2020, then only I'll give you the funds. That is being opposed by the state government. They say that all these funds are coming with conditionalities, which is eroding the space or autonomy for the states. Okay, the push for one nation, one language is being opposed, is being highlighted by this committee. Similarly, with regard to centralization of medical examinations like your NEET and NEXT, which is conducted by national testing agencies, it is a pan-India level exam. Tamil Nadu has been from the beginning opposing these exams because it is saying that these national exams are at a disadvantage for rural regional language students, because they'll not be able to get access to good quality coaching, and therefore they'll lose out on this entrance examination, and the inequality is going to further widen. So Tamil Nadu argues that instead of that power has to be restored to the state itself, right? So it has been filing cases or fighting cases in the Supreme Court with regard to abolition of NEET, but it has not continued, it has not succeeded till now. But again, the issue has been highlighted in the report. Likewise, it says that there has been misuse of your central investigative agencies, especially in opposition ruled states. Your CBI or your ED is being misused to target your political opposition in the states. So these are all some of the centralizing trends that has been observed and highlighted in the report. Right now, what are the implications of this? The implications are, the first and the foremost thing, since there is a fiscal space which has been reduced because of introduction of your GST, states overall contribution for the revenue has come down in the last decade from 38% to 32%. So states' own tax revenue share has fallen down from 38% to 32% of the combined revenue over the last decade. So it clearly shows that state is becoming increasingly dependent on the center, which goes against the spirit of federalism. Federalism means what? Division of powers. So there are certain powers which are allocated for state, there are certain powers which are allocated for the union, and each is not going to depend each is not going to interfere or depend too much on the functioning in their own domains. Right? For example, states does not have much say with regard to monetary policy, banking, with regard to finance, with regard to external policy, with regard to defense. Okay, that's all the domain of the center. States are primarily at the you can say much proximity to the people, and they are responsible for your health, education, roads, so on and so forth. Right? So the argument is that if central leaves certain things to the states, central can effectively concentrate on its own things. So that argument is being given. So you are, by these centralizing tendencies, states are becoming increasingly dependent on center. Center is also not able to focus on those things which is actually supposed to be focused. So that is the implication. Second, there is going to be a deadlock between your governor and your state legislature. Okay, so Kerala and Tamil Nadu, at one point of time, in 2023, there were 10 bills which was pending, which was passed by the state legislative assembly, but was not given assent by the governor. So there is going to be deadlock with regard to the functioning of legislature itself, right? And more importantly, when you're trying to impose all this one nation, one language sort of a policy, there is going to be erosion of your regional identity. Your federalism is deeply integrated with your regional identity. So if the federalism itself is weakened, there is a threat of erosion of your regional identity. That is one of the implications which has been told. And there's also weakening of your democratic accountability, because voters are going to elect their MLAs and they're going to hold them accountable. But if MLAs or the state government or the state legislature does not have certain powers to fulfill the aspirations of voters, then it is nothing but weakening of democratic spirit itself. Okay, so state government cannot go back and say that, or nowadays they are saying it. Okay, state government are saying that we are not given sufficient powers to function effectively to fulfill all your aspirations or to fulfill all the promises that have been made to you. Okay, so there is going to be weakening of democratic accountability. It's a threat to basic structure. Federalism is a basic structure. So, and that is going to be under threat because of all these centralizing tendencies. And lastly, and one of the important or unique factor which I found it, which was interesting, is also that states are actually functioning as innovation laboratories. Okay, so if midday meal scheme was initially implemented only in the state of Tamil Nadu, your public distribution scheme or your public health system the kind of policy that you want to expand at a national level. Before that, it was worked out in a state of Kerala or in the state of Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh with regard to public distribution. Manrega was actually tried and tested first in the state of Maharashtra. Your ENAM, that is Electronic National Agriculture Market, was first tried and tested in Karnataka. So states are acting something like a policy laboratories. Any policy which might work at a state level, national government can pick it up and scale it up at a pan-India level. So if you are weakening the spaces at the state level itself, if you're not providing them enough power, if you're not providing them enough autonomy, then this laboratories itself is going to get weakened, and you will not be able to come out with innovative policies that you can replicate at a pan-India level. So that's a very unique point which I felt, right? So I don't know if you're able to understand the gravity of this argument. It's like before you want to take at a pan-India level, you need certain laboratories. So you need to check at a smaller scale. If those spaces are only being weakened or curtailed, then there is less scope for trying out some new things. That's the argument which is being made. Right? I think if you are able to include this argument in your answers, I think your answers will stand out in a more unique manner. Right? Now let's come back to the actual recommendations of the report itself. First and foremost thing, I think they are suggested reforms on the governor's office. What they are saying, governors are always appointed politically, right? There is no conditions and nothing like that. So right now what the committee is recommending is that the state government has to select from the panel of 3 names that has been approved by the state assembly. For example, if the union government wants to appoint governor to the state of Tamil Nadu assembly is going to debate and it is going to recommend 3 names to the union government. So union government should pick up from these 3 names itself, is the suggestion made by Kurian Joseph Committee, so that there is going to be symbiotic relationship or cordial relationship between governor and the state legislative assembly. Right now, what is happening is that all these appointments are political appointments, and as a result, there is a friction between your office of governor and your Tamil Nadu or your state government or state legislature. So they say that states needs to be taken on board before your appointment process itself. Okay. They also argue that there needs to be a fixed tenure, so they cannot be removed or they cannot be asked to vacate their office due to any change in political parties. So no pleasure of president, because now pleasure of president is used as a punishment. So if any governor is not performing well, or if there is a change in elected government at the state level, if an opposition party comes to power at the state level, there is change in your governors. So they say that don't do all these things, give a fixed tenure of 5 years. That pleasure of president, whichever was there, you please remove it. They are also suggesting strict timeline for the bills to be given assent. Okay, any bills which was passed by the state legislative assembly needs to be given assent by the governor, or needs to be taken action or given reference to the president within a fixed timeline. And they also say that you please remove the role of governor from your chancellor of your state universities, because that was one of the friction points, right? So these are all some of the measures which has been recommended by the committee in order to reform the governor's office. We'll also talk about your overall of your language policy. They clearly reject the argument of one nation, one language policy, and it goes one step ahead and says that English has to be permanently etched in our Indian constitution. Earlier, it was all a temporary measure for 10 years for the working of the constitution. But now the committee has clearly stated that you amend Article 343 to permanently cement English as the union's official language. It cannot be like a temporary measures giving life extension for 10 years, 15 years, no. So they say that you permanently include English as the union's official language. And it's also making one other new argument that whenever union government is undertaking surveys, the argument that they are making is it is misclassifying certain dialects of Hindi as Hindi itself. Okay, so certain languages may be different from Hindi, but they are misclassified as dialects of Hindi. So that anomaly has to be rectified, or we need to recognize independent languages in a more honest manner, is the argument made by the committee, right? Next is your delimitation and electoral reforms. I think after 2021, there is going to be reorganization with regard to the number of seats in the Lok Sabha. So states which are having less populations are going to lose out. States which are able to control populations, which performed well in developmental parameters, especially your southern states, who are able to control the populations, will, since it is a proportional representation system in the Lok Sabha, so they will be the losers with regard to the number of, or the proportion of seats at the Lok Sabha level. So they argue that whatever is the freezing of the Lok Sabha seats, that has to continue till 2126. That is for another 100 years. This, whatever is the share of seats that each state is having at the Lok Sabha, should continue for another 100 years. So that is a that is a huge suggestion to be made. Or they are arguing that until the fertility rate of all the states are reached or the same level, until that time at least you freeze the delimitation process. Right now, currently, whatever are the seats that each states are having at a national level in your Lok Sabha is basically based on 1971 population count. Right. So as over the last 5 decades, the population has varied in different rates in different states. Your UP is now having 22 crore population. Compare that with your Tamil Nadu around 7 to 9 crores. Right. So obviously the share of seats in the Lok Sabha is going to vary in the upcoming new census. And southern states are going to lose out because of low population. So they argue that, and low states means low political leverage, right? Low political influence. So they argue that you continue to freeze this delimitation for next 100 years or until all the states' fertility rate are going to converge. And it is also rejected one nation, one election concept itself. A new constitutional amendment bill was introduced during the Modi 2 era, Modi 3 era, right? And Tamil Nadu, or the report has clearly stated we have to reject the concept itself, right? So that's a separate topic in itself. There are arguments for it, there are arguments against it. We'll not go into detail about it. I think most of you might be aware about it. I'm just saying that what all are included in the report's recommendation. Instead, they argue that state election commissions needs to be empowered. Your national or central election commission needs to concentrate only on the elections of your parliament and president and vice president. The local body elections or the state level legislative assembly elections needs to be handled by state election commissions and should be given and should be empowered to conduct it. That's the argument or the recommendations of the report. I know these things are not going to come to fruition, right? Because giving up power is not easy, right? And finally, under the heading of your health, education and fiscal autonomy, they say that you bring back certain subjects from concurrent list to state list. Okay, bring back education, health and forest from concurrent list to state list. And they also say that you please abolish your NEET examination so that state governments are able to conduct their own examinations, which are somehow supporting your rural, regional background students. And finally, with regard to the fiscal autonomy, it says that please reform your GST council so that states are also having greater say, so that central does not have a veto power. And one of the other important recommendations that the report has made is with regard to centrally sponsored schemes. Right now, the percentage is 60% is given by the center and 40% by the states. They say that you please increase that percentage to 80%. So center should contribute 80% and only state should only contribute 20%. Okay. So these are all some of the, you can say, highlights of the report that we have made. It is not exhaustive, but I have only handpicked the most important ones. Obviously, your phase 2 report will be released in the coming months, and we might have to get updated with it. But if you have understood the background, the context, the philosophy behind it, I think you'll be able to easily connect with what is happening, right? So one question regarding this topic: federalism in India is being weakened not through dramatic constitutional rupture, but through incremental institutional and administrative shifts. So what all we told about, you can say the centralizing tendencies, they are not, you can say, dramatic constitutional rupture. These are all done in an incremental institutional and administrative measures. So in the light of this Kurian Joseph Committee report, examine the key trends that have led to the erosion of state economy in India. They are basically arguing about what are the current centralizing tendencies, right? So please attempt it and send it to me on my WhatsApp or to my email. Looking forward for your responses. All the very best.